Jack,
I was in an accident. I need you.
cheaters are not my priority.
I heard my wife say she couldn't pick me up from the emergency room because she was having lunch with her male best friend and couldn't just leave. That's when I knew my marriage was over. Okay, I texted back, watching rain streak down the ER window as a nurse cleaned gravel from my palm. The accident happened fast. I was driving back from inspecting a foundation pour when some idiot in a rusted pickup blew through a stop sign. I yanked the wheel hard right, felt the truck spin twice, maybe 3 times, then nothing but the hiss of the airbag deflating and that metallic taste you get when adrenaline floods your system. The paramedics said I was lucky, just bruised ribs and a gash on my hand from where I'd grabbed the door handle. Could have been worse. Should have been worse, considering how my Ford looked like a crushed beer can. But sitting there in that sterile room, staring at Holly's text, I realized luck had nothing to do with it. Can't just leave, she'd written. Like I was asking her to abandon a dying relative instead of picking up her husband of 16 years from the hospital. The phone buzzed again. Evan and I already ordered. Rain's getting bad anyway. Take an Uber. Evan Shore. Her best friend since college. The guy who always showed up at our barbecues with expensive wine and stories about his marketing job downtown. The guy who remembered Holly's birthday before I did last year and texted her at midnight. The guy who called our house at 10 p.m. to talk about his relationship problems with his wife. I'd never liked him, but Holly said I was being paranoid, said he was harmless. Said their friendship was older than our marriage, and I needed to respect that. Maybe I should have trusted my gut. The nurse came back with discharge papers. You'll want to take it easy for a few days, she said, not looking up from her clipboard. Any nausea, dizziness, vision problems, come back immediately. I signed where she pointed and walked out into the rain. My truck was somewhere on Peterson Road waiting for a tow, so I called Danny Kowalski, my site foreman. Jesus, Jack, you okay? His voice was rough from 30 years of cigarettes. Fine. Can you pick me up at General Hospital? And handle the Morrison site tomorrow. I might be moving slow. On my way. While I waited, I opened Holly's text thread again. The timestamps told a story. She'd been at lunch with Evan for 2 hours already when I called. 2 hours on a Tuesday afternoon when she was supposed to be working her shift at the clinic. But that wasn't what made my chest tight. It was the message above my accident call, sent 20 minutes before I'd even left the Morrison site. Table for 2 at Harbor Grill. He'll never know. Danny pulled up in his beat-up Silverado, engine coughing like an old man. I climbed in, feeling every bruise from the accident settle into my bones. You look like hell, he said, pulling away from the hospital. Feel worse. I stared out at the rain. Holly couldn't pick me up. Important lunch. Danny glanced at me, said nothing. He'd been married twice, divorced twice. He knew the sound of trouble. At home, I sat in my truck for a long minute before going inside. Our house felt different, smaller somehow, like the walls had moved closer together when I wasn't looking. I walked through the rooms we'd painted together, past photos of family vacations and anniversary dinners, and stopped at the kitchen table where Holly and I ate breakfast every morning. The same table where she'd sat 3 weeks ago, crying about Evan's marriage problems, how his wife Melissa didn't understand him, how he needed someone to talk to. I'd handed her tissues and listened, like a good husband should. Now I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the police department's non-emergency number. Officer Perez answered on the second ring. This is Jack Marlowe. I was in a car accident earlier. Minor thing, just got out of the ER. I need a favor. What kind of favor, Mr. Marlowe? My wife's having lunch at Harbor Grill downtown. She doesn't know about the accident yet, and I don't want her to panic when she hears sirens or sees it on the scanner. Could you send someone to let her know I'm okay? Perez paused. That's unusual, but not a problem. What's her name? Holly Marlowe. She's with a friend, Evan Shore. They should be at a table near the windows. I'll have someone swing by. Anything specific you want us to tell her? I thought about that text message. He'll never know. Tell her that I'm alive, I said. And that I know. Know what? She'll understand. After I hung up, I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened Holly's jewelry box. Behind her grandmother's ring was a spare phone, an old iPhone she kept for emergencies. She'd forgotten about it months ago when she upgraded, but I remembered where she hid the charger. The screen lit up after a few minutes. No passcode. Holly never could remember numbers. I scrolled through her messages, and everything I'd suspected but tried not to believe spread across the screen like spilled ink. Evan, can't wait to see you. Reserved our usual table. Holly, Jack's doing a site visit today. We'll have time. Evan, my wife thinks I'm in Seattle for work. Perfect cover. Holly, this is getting dangerous. Evan, only if we get caught. Holly, he'll never know. The messages went back months. Lunch dates that coincided with my inspections, late-night calls when I was working overtime, weekend trips to visit her sister that lined up perfectly with Evan's business travel. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. Officer Perez pushed through the glass doors of Harbor Grill at exactly 2:47 p.m., according to the security footage I'd request later. Holly and Evan were at table 12, the one by the big window facing Main Street. The same table they'd sat at 6 times in the past 3 months. Holly was laughing when Perez approached. Mid-laugh, wine glass halfway to her lips, her free hand resting on Evan's wrist like it belonged there. "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you Holly Marlowe?" The laughter died. Holly set down her glass, and I imagined I could hear it clink against the table, even though I was 3 miles away, sitting in my kitchen with her spare phone. "Yes, that's me." Perez leaned down, spoke quietly. Whatever he said made Evan go pale and Holly's eyes dart toward the door like she expected to see me standing there. But I wasn't. I was at home scrolling through 2 years of lies. The text came through on the spare phone at 2:52 p.m. Evan, what did the cops say exactly? Holly, that Jack's alive and knows. What does that mean? Evan, it means we're screwed. I watched them through the window in my mind, imagining Evan's hands shaking as he tried to flag down the waitress, Holly's face white as she stared at her phone. 2 people who thought they were untouchable, realizing they'd miscalculated. The spare phone buzzed again. Holly, I'm going home. We need to stop this. Evan, too late for that. Holly, it's not too late. I can fix this. Evan, you can't fix this. He sent a cop, Holly. A freaking cop to our table. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Holly's car wasn't in the driveway yet, but she'd be here soon. Probably with a story about how worried she was, how she rushed to the hospital, but I was already gone. The rain had stopped, but the sky stayed gray. At 4:30 p.m., I borrowed Danny's truck and drove past Harbor Grill. Holly's Honda was still in the parking lot, but I could see her through the window, standing outside under the awning. She was pacing, phone pressed to her ear. Evan stood 10 feet away, his own phone out, typing furiously. I slowed down but didn't stop, just watched them through the windshield like I was watching strangers. Holly's hair was different, shorter, styled in a way I hadn't seen before. When had she changed it? How many things had I missed while I was busy working 60-hour weeks to pay for the house she was using to betray me? Holly looked up as I passed. For a second, our eyes met through the glass, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, raw fear. I kept driving. At the red light, I opened the glove box and took out Holly's spare phone. 3 new messages. Evan, was that him? In the truck? Holly, I think so. Oh God, what if he's been watching us? Evan, we need to talk. Not here. My office. The light turned green. I drove home and parked in our driveway, engine still running. Through our kitchen window, I could see the table where Holly and I used to eat dinner together, where she'd help our kids with homework, where she pretended to love me while planning her afternoons with another man. I turned off the engine and sat in the silence. 20 minutes later, Holly's car pulled in behind me. She got out slowly, like she was walking toward a bomb she couldn't see. I was already inside when she opened the front door. Jack? Her voice was small, uncertain. How are you feeling? I came as soon as I could. I was sitting at the kitchen table with the spare phone face down beside my coffee mug. How was lunch? It was fine. Evan was having problems with Melissa again. You know how it is. I know exactly how it is. She hung her purse on the hook by the door, same as always. Kicked off her heels, same as always. But her hands were shaking, and she kept glancing at the phone on the table. Are you hurt? The officer said you were in an accident. Bruised ribs, nothing serious. I picked up the spare phone and set it on the table between us. But I found something interesting while I was waiting for you. Holly stared at the phone like it was a snake ready to strike. That's your emergency phone. The one you forgot about. I touched the screen, and it lit up with their text thread. "The one you've been using to coordinate with Evan." She didn't deny it, didn't cry, just stood there in her work clothes, looking at evidence of her own betrayal. "How long?" I asked. "Jack, please." "How long, Holly?" 8 months. Longer than I'd thought. Longer than I'd feared. "Why?" She finally moved, pulling out a chair across from me. The same chair she'd sat in when she cried about Evan's marriage problems. "You're never here," she said. "You work all the time. Evan listens to me. I work to pay for this house, for our life." "What life?" "You leave at 6 a.m. and come home at 8 p.m. covered in concrete dust. When's the last time we talked about anything that wasn't bills or schedules?" I thought about that. She wasn't wrong, but she wasn't right either. "When's the last time you asked me about my day? When's the last time you seemed interested in anything I do?" Holly's face hardened. "Your job isn't that complicated, Jack. You look at buildings and make sure they won't fall down." That's when I knew. Not just about the affair. I'd known that since I saw the messages, but I knew Holly had stopped loving me long before Evan came along. Maybe she'd never really loved me at all. "You're right," I said. "It's not complicated, just like this isn't complicated." I stood up, slipped the phone into my pocket. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you pack a bag and stay somewhere else tonight. Tomorrow we figure out the rest." "Jack, we can work through this. I'll end it with Evan, I promise." I looked at her sitting at our table, still trying to negotiate her way out of consequences. "You already ended it," I said, "when you chose lunch over your husband's emergency." Holly left that night with a suitcase and puffy eyes. She kissed our kids goodbye. Sarah, 14, and Tyler, 11, told them Daddy and Mommy needed some space to work things out, the kind of lie adults tell when they can't face the truth themselves. After the kids went to bed, I sat in my office and read every message on Holly's spare phone. 2 years of conversations that showed me exactly how little my wife thought of me. Holly: "Jack's at another late inspection. Says he won't be home till 9. Evan: "His loss is my gain. Dinner tomorrow?" Holly: "Can't wait. He never takes me anywhere nice anymore." Evan: "You deserve better than microwave dinners and construction stories." Holly: "Sometimes I think about what life would be like if I'd married someone different." Evan: "Someone who notices when you change your hair." Holly: "He still hasn't said anything." 3 weeks. Evan: "I noticed the first day." I scrolled back further, found the conversation from my birthday last month. Holly: "Jack wants to stay home and order pizza. 43 years old and he thinks Pizza Hut counts as celebrating." Evan: "Meet me at Francesca's instead. I made reservations." Holly: "He'll know I'm gone." Evan: "Tell him you're visiting your mother. He never calls to check." Holly: "Done. See you at 8. That night, she'd come home at midnight smelling like wine and expensive cologne. Told me her mother was having a rough evening. I'd believed her because I wanted to. Because doubting your wife of 16 years feels like doubting gravity. The messages got worse. Plans that coincided with my overnight inspections in other towns. Weekend trips to visit her sick aunt that matched Evan's business conferences. A whole parallel relationship built in the spaces I'd left unguarded. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was how little she tried to hide her contempt for me. Evan: "What if Jack finds out?" Holly: "He won't. He's too busy with his stupid job to notice anything. I could probably have you over for dinner and he'd just ask if you want to watch the game." Evan: "You make me sound like furniture." Holly: "You're not furniture. You're invisible to him." We both are. I closed the phone and walked to the kitchen. The table sat empty under the overhead light. 2 chairs pushed in, 2 placemats still set from dinner. Holly always insisted on placemats, said they made meals feel more civilized. I picked up her placemat and threw it in the trash. Then I called the police station and asked for Officer Perez. "Perez here. This is Jack Marlowe. You helped me earlier today." "Right, the message delivery. How you feeling?" "Better." "I wanted to ask, did anyone log you delivering that message? Any paperwork?" Perez chuckled. "Nah, we call that a courtesy. Nothing official about it." "Good to know. Thanks again." "No problem. Take care of yourself." I hung up and smiled for the first time since the accident. Holly and Evan thought they were careful, but they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated what a construction safety inspector knows about building a case. Holly came home the next evening like nothing had changed. She cooked spaghetti, asked the kids about school, mentioned that her book club might meet this weekend. The same routine we'd followed for years, but now it felt like watching a play where only the actors believed the script. I let her talk, nodded at the right moments, ate my dinner, and complimented the sauce. "How was work today?" she asked, cutting Tyler's meatballs into smaller pieces. "Routine inspection at the Peterson site. Foundation work." "That's nice." She wasn't listening. She never listened when I talked about work. Sarah was telling us about her algebra test when I decided to drop the first stone. "Officer Perez said you looked surprised to see him yesterday." Holly's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. The kitchen went quiet, except for the dishwasher humming in the corner. "Surprised?" She set down her fork carefully. "I was worried about you. He said you and Evan seemed like you'd seen a ghost. It was unexpected." "Having a police officer approach our table?" Tyler looked between us, sensing tension he couldn't name. Sarah kept eating, but I could tell she was listening. "How did he find you?" Holly asked, trying to sound casual. "I sent him?" The words hit the table like a hammer. Holly went completely still, and I watched color drain from her face. "You sent him? I figured you'd want to know I was okay." "Since you couldn't leave your lunch to pick up your husband from the emergency room, Jack, you explained that Evan was more important than me. I got the message." Tyler was looking between us now, confused. Sarah had stopped eating entirely. "Can we talk about this later?" Holly's voice was tight. "After the kids." "Sure." I stood up, picked up my plate. "Take your time finishing dinner." "I've got all night." I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened Holly's dresser drawer. Behind her winter sweaters was a small wooden box where she kept old letters and photos. I'd seen it 100 times, but never looked inside. Married people respect each other's privacy. But we weren't married people anymore. We were adversaries who happened to share a mortgage. Inside the box were printouts of emails from Evan. Dozens of them, dating back 18 months. Love letters disguised as friendship. Plans made in code words I was too trusting to decode. One email was dated last Christmas Eve. "Holly, watching you pretend to be happy during Jack's family dinner was heartbreaking. You deserve someone who sees how beautiful you are when you laugh. Someone who knows your favorite wine. Someone who remembers you exist when work gets busy. I can't keep pretending I'm just your friend when I think about you every morning and dream about you every night. We need to make a choice." Below it, Holly had written in pen, "Choice made. New year, new life." That was 7 months ago. 7 months of my wife planning her exit while I worked overtime to surprise her with a vacation to Mexico for our anniversary. A vacation she'd canceled, claiming her mother needed help. The same weekend, Evan's conference got moved to Cancun. The next morning, I drove to the police station before my first site inspection. Officer Perez was at his desk, working through paperwork with coffee that looked strong enough to wake the dead. Mr. Marlowe, how you holding up?" "Getting by. Wanted to thank you for yesterday. My wife appreciated the personal touch." "No problem. Glad you're okay." He looked up from his papers. "Everything all right at home?" I sat down across from him. "Actually, I wanted to ask about that delivery. Did you log it anywhere? Any record of the request?" Perez leaned back in his chair. "Like I said, courtesy call. Nothing official. Why?" "Just curious about procedure. In my line of work, everything gets documented." "Well, this wasn't documented. Just a husband wanting his wife to know he was safe. Nothing wrong with that." "And you told her exactly what I asked?" "That I was alive and that I know, word for word." Perez studied my face. "You sure everything's okay?" "Perfect. Thanks again." I left the station and drove to Evan's office downtown. Shore Marketing occupied the 3rd floor of a glass building that probably cost more per month than I made in a year. The receptionist was young, blonde, and smiled like she'd been hired specifically for that purpose. "I'm here to see Evan Shore." "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him Jack Marlowe is here. He'll want to see me." She picked up her phone, spoke quietly, then looked confused. "He'll be right out." Evan appeared 2 minutes later, looking like a man who'd been expecting bad news. His tie was loose, his hair messed up like he'd been running his hands through it. "Jack, hey, how are you feeling after yesterday?" like a man who knows the truth. His office was all glass and chrome, with a view of the harbor that probably cost him an extra $1,000 a month. I sat down without being invited and placed Holly's spare phone on his desk. Evan stared at it, but didn't touch it. That's Holly's emergency phone, the one she forgot about. I leaned back in the leather chair. I have everything, Evan. Every message, every plan, every lie. Jack, listen. No, you listen. I know about the lunches, the trips, the hotel receipts you probably think you hid so well. I know about Christmas Eve when you told my wife she deserved better than me. Evan's face went through several expressions: denial, anger, resignation. He settled on resignation. What do you want? I want you to disappear from my family's life. Completely. No contact with Holly. No calls, no texts, no accidental meetings at the grocery store. And if I don't? I picked up the phone and scrolled to a particular message thread. Then I send these screenshots to your wife, to your boss, to anyone who thinks Evan Shore is a trustworthy family man. Melissa doesn't need to know about this. Actually, she does, but that's between you and her. I stood up. I have everything I need. Walking out, I heard his chair scrape against the floor, but he didn't follow me. In the elevator, my phone buzzed with a text from Holly. Coming home early. We need to talk. I texted back. I'm not home. Running errands. But I wasn't running errands. I was driving to Hardware World to buy new locks for every door in my house. I changed the locks while Holly was at work. Front door, back door, and the side entrance by the garage. 3 deadbolts that had never seen her keys. The kids were at school, the house was quiet, and I worked methodically, the way I approached everything. Measure twice, cut once, make sure the job is done right the first time. By noon, I had 3 sets of keys, and Holly had none. I took a photo of the new front door deadbolt and sent it to her work phone with a simple message: stay with Evan tonight. The response came back in 30 seconds. Jack, please don't do this. Let me come home and we'll talk. We're past talking. Where will I stay? I can't just... Figure it out. You've been planning this for months. My phone rang. Holly calling from the clinic. You can't just change the locks and kick me out of my own house, she said. Her voice was shaky, but there was anger underneath. My house. My name on the mortgage. You can stay wherever you've been staying when you tell me you're visiting your mother. I never stayed anywhere. Those were just day trips. Bees. I called your mother last month when you were supposedly visiting her. She hadn't seen you in 3 weeks. Silence on the other end. I'll call a lawyer, she said finally. Good idea. While you're at it, ask him about abandonment as grounds for divorce. And make sure he explains how infidelity affects custody arrangements. You're recording this call, aren't you? What do you think? She hung up. I saved the recording and forwarded it to Mark Brennan, the family lawyer who'd handled our wills 5 years ago. At 3:15, I got a text from Evan's number. You're making a mistake. Holly loves you. I typed back. Then why is she screwing you? No response. At 6 p.m., I picked up Sarah and Tyler from their after-school programs, drove them home like it was any other day. Where's Mom? Sarah asked as we pulled into the driveway. Working late. It's just us tonight. I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, their favorite comfort meal. While they ate, I explained that Mom and I were having some problems, and she might be staying somewhere else for a while. Are you getting divorced? Tyler asked, because 11-year-olds cut straight to the point. I don't know yet, buddy, but whatever happens, nothing changes how much we both love you. Sarah was quieter, more suspicious. She was old enough to sense the real weight of what was happening. Is Mom okay? She asked. She's fine, just needs some time to think about things. At 8 p.m., Holly came home and rang the doorbell like a stranger. I opened the door but didn't let her in. I need clothes and my things. I packed a bag. It's on the porch. She looked past me toward the living room where Tyler was doing homework. Can I at least say goodnight to my children? They're asleep. It's 8 o'clock. They went to bed early. Big day tomorrow. Holly's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Please don't punish them for what I did. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting my family. I'm your family too. No, I said. You're Evan's family now. I closed the door and turned the new deadbolt. Through the window, I watched her stand on our porch for 5 minutes before picking up her suitcase and walking to her car. The house felt bigger with her gone. Mark Brennan's office smelled like leather and old coffee. He was a thin man with gray hair and tired eyes who'd been practicing family law for 25 years. He'd seen every kind of marriage die every possible way. Infidelity cases are messy, he said, spreading Holly's text messages across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. But you've got documentation. Good documentation. What are my chances? For what? Divorce? That's easy. No fault state. For favorable custody? Better than average, especially with her abandoning the marital home. She didn't abandon it. I changed the locks. Mark looked at me over his reading glasses. After she chose to prioritize her affair partner over your medical emergency. That's abandonment in spirit, if not in law. He picked up one of the printed messages. This text thread shows premeditation, planning around your work schedule. Using your absence to facilitate the relationship. That speaks to fitness as a parent. What's next? We file for separation first, cite marital misconduct and abandonment. Request temporary custody of the children and possession of the marital home. Mark leaned back in his chair. But Jack, understand, this is going to get ugly. Holly will fight back. Let her fight. She'll try to make you look like the bad guy. Say you're controlling, that you kicked her out without warning. Her lawyer will paint you as vindictive. Can they make that stick? Depends on how clean you keep your hands going forward. No maltreatment. No interfering with her access to the children. No showing up at her workplace. I thought about Evan's office, about the phone I'd placed on his desk like a bomb. What about her affair partner? Can I contact him? I'd advise against it. Let the evidence speak for itself. Too late for that. Mark set down the papers. What did you do? Visited his office, showed him the phone, made it clear I knew everything. Any threats? Just information. I told him to disappear from my family's life. That's borderline maltreatment. But not illegal. No, not illegal. But it shows intent to intimidate. If this goes to court, Holly's lawyer will use it against you. I leaned forward. Mark, they've been planning this for months. They thought I was too stupid to notice, too busy to care. They underestimated me. So you're what? Teaching them a lesson? I'm protecting my family and my assets from people who think they can steal both. Mark was quiet for a long moment. Okay, we file tomorrow. But from now on, everything goes through lawyers. No more personal contact with either of them. Agreed. I left his office and drove to the elementary school where Tyler was getting out of soccer practice. He ran to the truck with mud on his cleats and grass stains on his jersey. Did you win? I asked. Yeah, 3-1. I scored the last goal. That's great, buddy. Is Mom coming to Saturday's game? I looked at my son's hopeful face in the rearview mirror. I don't know. We'll have to see. She always comes to my games. I know she does. But sitting there, watching Tyler buckle his seatbelt, I realized Holly had missed more games than she'd attended this season. Always something more important. Always another priority. I'd just been too busy working to notice. The phone call came Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. In construction, early calls usually meant emergencies. Is this Jack Marlowe? Yeah. This is Melissa Shore, Evan's wife. I think we need to talk. I sat up in bed, suddenly awake. Okay. I found your lawyer's business card in my mailbox yesterday, along with some very interesting photos. What kind of photos? My husband and your wife having lunch at Harbor Grill, multiple occasions. They look very comfortable together. I got dressed while she talked. Melissa's voice was steady, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. How long have you known? She asked. Few days? You? I suspected for months. Evan's been working late, traveling more, coming home smelling like perfume that isn't mine. But I didn't have proof until yesterday. What kind of proof? Phone records? Credit card statements? Hotel receipts he thought he'd hidden? Evan's not as careful as he thinks. We agreed to meet at a diner outside town, away from places where Holly or Evan might see us. Melissa was already there when I arrived, a small woman with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked like crap, she said when I sat down. Feel worse? She slid a manila folder across the table. Everything I found, organized by date. Inside were credit card statements showing lunch charges at Harbor Grill, hotel stays in towns where Evan claimed to be working alone. flower purchases on days when Melissa hadn't received any flowers. This goes back almost a year, I said. Longer. I just didn't start saving evidence until recently. The waitress brought coffee. Melissa waited until she was gone before continuing. Evan thinks I'm stupid. Thinks because I don't work outside the home, I can't understand bank statements or phone bills. But I managed our finances for 12 years. I know what our normal expenses look like. She pulled out another paper. This is the smoking gun. Hotel receipt from the Marriott downtown. Same day Holly told you she was visiting her sick aunt. How'd you get this? Evan left it in his pants pocket. I do his laundry. Melissa's smile was sharp. Amazing what careless men leave behind. What do you want to do with all this? I want to destroy them, both of them. Carefully and completely. I can work with that. We spent an hour comparing evidence, building a timeline that showed the affair wasn't some spontaneous mistake. It was a calculated betrayal that had been going on for almost 2 years. My lawyer says we should coordinate our filings, Melissa said. Hit them simultaneously so they can't prepare stories together. When? Next week. Before they realize how much we know. I thought about Holly, probably staying at some hotel, thinking she could wait out my anger and come home when things cooled down. She has no idea what's coming, I said. Good. Let's keep it that way. Mark Brennan called Friday morning with an update that made my coffee taste better. Melissa Shore's lawyer contacted me. They want to coordinate discovery and depositions. Apparently, she has evidence that corroborates everything we've got. What kind of evidence? Hotel receipts, phone records, credit card statements. The affair's been going on for almost 2 years, Jack. Your wife and her boyfriend weren't just careless. They were reckless. When do we file? Monday morning. Melissa's lawyer will file for separation the same day. By noon, both Holly and Evan will be served with papers. Served where? We're going to make it public. Holly will be served at her workplace, Evan at his office. Maximum embarrassment, minimum opportunity to coordinate a response. I thought about Holly's colleagues at the medical clinic. People who'd known her for years. People who thought she was a devoted wife and mother. That seems harsh. Jack, they had an affair for 2 years while you worked overtime to support your family. They made their choices in public places. Now they get to face the consequences in public. You're right. Besides, Melissa wants Evan served at Harbor Grill during lunch hour. She's got a flair for the dramatic. That afternoon, I picked up Sarah and Tyler from school and took them to get ice cream. We sat in the parking lot of Dairy Queen, eating sundaes and talking about everything except the elephant in the room. Dad, Sarah said, stirring her chocolate sauce, are you and Mom getting divorced? Tyler stopped eating and looked at me with vanilla ice cream on his upper lip. Probably, sweetheart. Because she's been acting weird? How do you mean weird? Always on her phone, always going out. She missed my parent-teacher conference last month, but didn't miss lunch with Evan the next day. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. When had she gotten so observant? When had she started noticing things I'd been too blind to see? You knew about Evan? I knew something was wrong. Mom's been different since Christmas. Happier, but not happy with us. Happy about something else. Tyler nodded. She stopped asking about my soccer games. And she bought new clothes, Sarah added. Expensive ones. She told me they were for work, but she doesn't need dress-up clothes to work at Dr. Peterson's office. I realized my kids had been watching their mother's affair unfold while I'd been oblivious. They'd seen the signs I'd missed, noticed the changes I'd ignored. I'm sorry you had to figure that out by yourselves. Are we going to be okay? Tyler asked. Yeah, buddy, we're going to be fine. Saturday morning, Melissa called with an update. Evan's been staying at the Marriott since Tuesday. Same hotel where he took Holly for their romantic getaways. The irony is delicious. How do you know that? I followed him Thursday night, sat in the parking lot and watched him check in. He's in room 247. Melissa, be careful. Stalking charges? I wasn't stalking. I was conducting surveillance on my own husband using a public road, perfectly legal. What's Holly doing? Your guess is as good as mine, but Evan's been texting someone constantly. His phone bill shows hundreds of messages since Tuesday. Sunday evening, I got a call from Holly. She sounded tired, defeated. Jack, this has gone far enough. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. No, we can't. I ended it with Evan. It's over. I want to come home. Too little. Too late. Please. I'm staying at a motel near the highway. It's not safe. There are pill dealers in the next room. Then find somewhere else. I don't have anywhere else. My parents won't return my calls. My sister won't talk to me. Evan's not answering his phone. Maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 2 years lying to everyone who trusted you. I know you're angry. I'm not angry, Holly. I'm done. I hung up and blocked her number on my phone. Whatever happened next, it would go through lawyers. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of wind that cuts through your jacket and reminds you winter's coming whether you're ready or not. I dropped the kids at school and drove downtown to the courthouse. Mark Brennan was waiting in the lobby with a briefcase full of evidence and a confidence I envied. "Ready for this?" he asked. "Ready." Melissa Shore arrived 10 minutes later with her lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Mills who looked like she ate opposing counsel for breakfast. We nodded at each other, allies in this strange war we hadn't chosen. "Any word from their side?" I asked. "Holly's lawyer filed a response Friday," Mark said. "Standard denial of abandonment, claims of emotional misuse, request for temporary support. Nothing unexpected." "Emotional misuse?" "She says you changed the locks without warning, kicked her out of her home, and denied her access to her children." Classic sufferer narrative. Is that going to work? Not with the evidence we have. Judge Catherine Walsh took the bench at 9 a.m. sharp. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen every kind of domestic drama the county could produce. "This is a hearing for temporary orders in Marlowe versus Marlowe," she said. "Counsel, proceed." Mark stood up and laid out our case methodically. Holly's affair with Evan Shore. The text messages showing premeditation and contempt for our marriage. The timing of her refusal to pick me up from the emergency room. Your Honor, Mrs. Marlowe chose her affair partner over her injured husband. This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment. It was the culmination of a 2-year pattern of deception and abandonment. Holly's lawyer, a thin man named David Foster, tried to paint me as a controlling husband who'd driven his wife into another man's. Harms through neglect and emotional distance. Mr. Marlowe works excessive hours, shows no interest in his wife's emotional needs, and retaliated against her request for space by changing the locks and denying her access to her own children. But then Mark played the recordings. Holly's voice clear and cold. "I can't just leave." Her explanation that Evan was more important than her husband's emergency. Her admission that the affair had lasted 8 months, which we knew was a lie, but even 8 months was damning enough. Judge Walsh listened to everything without expression. When both lawyers finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Marlowe, do you wish to make a statement?" Holly stood up. She was wearing a conservative blue dress I'd never seen before, probably bought specifically for court. Her hair was pulled back, and she looked like she'd been crying. "Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake, I know that. But I never abandoned my children or my responsibilities as a mother. My husband locked me out of my own home without warning, without discussion. I've been staying at a motel for 6 days, unable to see my children except for brief visits at school pickup. Mr. Marlowe, your response?" I stood up, and for a moment the courtroom was completely silent. "Your Honor, my wife had an affair for 2 years. When I was injured in a car accident and asked her to pick me up from the emergency room, she said she couldn't leave her lunch with her boyfriend. That's when I knew our marriage was over. I changed the locks to protect my children from the chaos she'd created." Judge Walsh made notes on her legal pad. "I've reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties. The text messages and phone records paint a clear picture of an extramarital relationship that was extensive and ongoing. Mrs. Marlowe's choice to prioritize that relationship over her husband's medical emergency shows a fundamental breakdown in marital priorities." Holly's lawyer whispered something to her, but she shook her head. "However," the judge continued, "Mr. Marlowe's decision to change the locks and exclude his wife from the marital home, while understandable emotionally, was not legally appropriate." My heart sank. "Therefore, I'm ordering the following. Temporary custody of the minor children will remain with Mr. Marlowe, with supervised visitation for Mrs. Marlowe on weekends. Mrs. Marlowe will be allowed to return to the marital home to collect her personal belongings under court supervision. Mr. Marlowe will continue to occupy the family residence pending final divorce proceedings." Holly's face crumpled. Foster put his hand on her shoulder. Furthermore, I'm ordering both parties to refrain from contact with each other, except through counsel, Mrs. Marlowe, you are prohibited from bringing your paramour to any location where the children might encounter him. Thank you, Your Honor, Mark said. As we filed out of the courtroom, I saw Holly in the hallway, crying into her phone. Foster was already walking away, probably headed to his next case. Melissa appeared beside me. How'd it go? Better than expected. You? Evan didn't even show up. His lawyer filed a motion for continuance, claiming he was out of town on business. The judge denied it and awarded me temporary possession of our house and assets. Where is he? Still at the Marriott, as far as I know, but his credit cards have been maxed out for 3 days. I canceled the joint accounts Friday. We walked out of the courthouse together, two people who'd learned to play a game we'd never wanted to learn. You know what the funny thing is? Melissa said as we reached the parking lot. What? Holly called me yesterday, wanted to know if we could work something out, like we were all just going to be friends and pretend this never happened. What did you tell her? I told her to ask Evan for help. After all, he's the one she chose. The final hearing was scheduled for a cold Tuesday in November. 3 months had passed since the accident that started everything, and the leaves were gone from the trees around the courthouse. Holly had lost weight. She looked smaller sitting next to Foster at the defendant's table, wearing the same blue dress from the first hearing. I wondered if it was the only court-appropriate outfit she could afford. Evan wasn't there. According to Melissa, he'd moved to Atlanta after their divorce was finalized, taken a job with a marketing firm that didn't know about his marriage-destroying hobby. His wife had gotten the house, the cars, and half his retirement account. Holly had gotten nothing from him except a forwarding address. All rise for the Honorable Catherine Walsh. The judge looked tired. This was her last case before lunch, and family court had a way of wearing people down. This is the final hearing in Marlowe versus Marlowe. Counsel, are we ready to proceed? Mark stood up with a thick folder of evidence that had grown over the past 3 months. Bank records showing Holly had drained their joint savings account. Phone logs proving she'd continued contacting Evan after being ordered not to. A police report from the motel where she'd been staying. Domestic disturbance involving her new boyfriend, a man she'd met at the bar downstairs. Your Honor, Mrs. Marlowe has shown a pattern of poor judgment and instability that makes joint custody inappropriate. She's violated court orders, misappropriated marital assets, and exposed herself to dangerous situations that could affect the children's safety. Foster tried to argue that Holly had made progress, that she was in counseling and had learned from her mistakes. But the evidence was overwhelming. The bank records were the final nail. Holly had withdrawn $8,000 from our savings account and given it to Evan to help with his legal fees. Money we'd saved for Sarah's college fund handed over to the man who'd helped destroy our family. Mrs. Marlowe, Judge Walsh said, do you wish to make a final statement? Holly stood up slowly. Your Honor, I know I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes, but I love my children and I want to be part of their lives. I'll do whatever it takes to prove I can be a good mother. Mr. Marlowe? I stood up and looked at the woman I'd been married to for 16 years. The woman who'd shared my bed, raised my children, and spent 2 years planning her escape. Your Honor, my wife chose another man over our family. When given the chance to choose again, she chose him over her own children's financial security. I don't think there's anything left to say. Judge Walsh made her ruling 15 minutes later. I got primary custody of the house and most of our assets. Holly got supervised visitation every other weekend and an order to pay child support based on her income as a medical receptionist. This court finds that Mrs. Marlowe's actions demonstrate a pattern of poor judgment and misplaced priorities that are not in the best interests of the minor children. As we walked out of the courthouse, I saw Holly standing by her car, a rusted Honda Civic she'd bought with what was left of her share of our savings. She was on the phone, probably calling her sister or her mother, looking for sympathy she wasn't going to find. Melissa was waiting by my truck. How'd it go? It's over. Good. Evan called me last night from Atlanta. Wanted to know if I'd consider reconciliation. What did you tell him? I told him to consider screwing himself. We laughed. Two divorced people sharing a joke that wasn't really funny. You know what I realized? Melissa said. We spent so much energy trying to destroy them, We forgot they'd already destroyed themselves. Maybe, but it felt good making sure everyone knew about it. Yes, it did. I drove home to a house that felt different now. Cleaner somehow. Lighter. The kids were at school, and I had the afternoon to myself for the first time in months. I walked through the rooms Holly and I had shared, looking at the spaces where her things used to be, her makeup on the bathroom counter, her books on the nightstand, her coffee mug in the sink every morning, all gone now, like she'd never been there at all. That evening, I cooked dinner for Sarah and Tyler. Spaghetti with meat sauce, their second favorite meal after grilled cheese. We ate at the kitchen table under the same light that had witnessed so many family dinners, so many homework sessions, so many conversations about their days. "Dad," Tyler said, twirling pasta around his fork. "Are you sad about Mom?" "Sometimes," I said. "Are you?" "Yeah, but I'm not sad about the fighting stopping." Sarah nodded. "It's quieter now, but good quiet, not scary quiet." After dinner, they did homework at the table while I cleaned the kitchen. Normal sounds, pencils on paper, erasers rubbing out mistakes, the dishwasher humming in the background. Sounds of a family that was smaller now, but still whole. At 8 o'clock, Holly called Tyler's phone. She was allowed 15 minutes every evening, supervised by me. "Hi, Mom," Tyler said, putting her on speaker. "Hi, baby. How was school today?" "Good. We had a science test. I think I did okay." "That's wonderful. What about soccer practice?" "Coach said I might start next week." "I'm so proud of you." Sarah took the phone next. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, sweetheart. How are you?" "Fine. I made honor roll again." "That's amazing." "I always knew you were the smart one in the family." I listened to Holly talk to our children like she was calling from across the country instead of across town. Like she was a distant relative checking in, not their mother who'd chosen an affair over her family. After they hung up, I helped Tyler with his math homework while Sarah read in the living room. Normal evening routine, the kind we'd had before Holly's betrayal turned everything upside down. "Dad," Tyler said, erasing a wrong answer, "do you think Mom will ever come home?" "No, buddy, she won't." "Good," he said quietly. "I like it better with just us." At 9 o'clock, I tucked Tyler into bed and said goodnight to Sarah. Then I went to the kitchen and sat at the table where everything had started to unravel. I thought about the morning of the accident, how I'd kissed Holly goodbye before leaving for the Morrison site, how she'd smiled and told me to drive carefully, how normal everything had seemed while she was planning her afternoon with another man. I thought about the text message that had ended our marriage. He'll never know, but I had known. Maybe not consciously, but some part of me had been waiting for the other shoe to drop. Some part of me had been preparing for this moment when I'd be sitting alone at our table, wondering how I'd missed all the signs. The spare phone was still in my desk drawer upstairs, along with all the evidence Mark had copied for court. I didn't need it anymore, but I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. It was proof that I hadn't imagined everything. Proof that my marriage had really happened and really ended. I wiped down the table with a kitchen towel, removing every trace of dinner. The surface was clean now, ready for tomorrow's breakfast, tomorrow's homework, tomorrow's normal life. Holly's contact had been deleted from my phone months ago. Her pictures were gone from the walls. Her name was crossed off our joint accounts. She'd been erased from our daily life as completely as if she'd never existed. Spring came early that year, and with it came changes I hadn't expected. Tyler made the starting lineup for his soccer team. Sarah got accepted to the Honor Society at school. I got promoted to senior inspector, which meant better pay and more flexible hours. Holly moved to an apartment across town and started dating a bartender from the motel where she'd been staying. According to Melissa, who kept tabs on these things, the relationship was as unstable as everything else in Holly's new life. Evan never came back from Atlanta. His mother called me once, looking for him, said he'd disappeared owing money to several people. I told her I didn't know where he was and wouldn't help her find him if I did. The kids adapted faster than I'd expected. They saw Holly every other weekend at a supervised visitation center, where a court employee made sure she didn't fill their heads with stories about how Daddy had driven Mommy away. "She cries a lot," Sarah told me after one visit. "Keeps saying she's sorry and asking if we forgive her. Do you?" "I don't know. She made her choice, right?" "She chose Evan over us." "That's right. Then why should we feel bad about it?" I didn't have an answer for that. My 14-year-old daughter had figured out something that had taken me months to understand. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. On a warm Saturday in May, I was cleaning out the garage when I found a box of old photos. Wedding pictures, vacation snapshots, birthday parties, the visual history of a marriage that had seemed real at the time. I sat on the garage floor and went through them one by one, Holly and me on our honeymoon in Mexico. Holly holding newborn Sarah in the hospital. Holly and Tyler at his first soccer game. In every picture, she was smiling. But looking at them now, I could see something I'd missed before, a distance in her eyes, like she was already planning her escape even then. I carried the box to the garbage can and dumped it in. 16 years of photos, gone in 30 seconds. Tyler appeared in the garage doorway. "What are you doing?" "Cleaning out old stuff." "Were those pictures of Mom?" "Some of them." "Good, we don't need them anymore." That evening, I made dinner for my kids and myself. We ate at the kitchen table and talked about their week, their plans for summer, their friends at school. Normal conversation. The kind we'd never had when Holly was around because she was always distracted, always checking her phone, always thinking about somewhere else she'd rather be. After dinner, I sent the kids to do homework and sat alone at the table. The same table where Holly had eaten her last meal as my wife. The same table where she'd planned her lunches with Evan while I worked overtime to pay for her life. The spare phone was still in my desk drawer upstairs, but I hadn't looked at it in months. The messages were evidence of something that no longer mattered. A betrayal that had already been punished. A marriage that had already ended. I went upstairs and pulled the phone from the drawer. The battery was dead, the screen black. I carried it down to the garage and dropped it in the trash can with the photos. Then I went back inside and locked the door. 2 years later, on a Tuesday morning that looked exactly like the one when everything changed, I was driving home from a routine inspection when my phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. "Is this Jack Marlowe?" "Yeah." "This is Officer Perez. Remember me?" I pulled over to the side of the road. "Of course, what's going on?" "Holly Marlowe was in an accident this morning. Car ran off the road near Miller's Curve. She's at General Hospital." I sat in my truck on the shoulder of Route 9, watching traffic go by and felt absolutely nothing. "Is she okay?" "Conscious, but banged up pretty good." "She's asking for you. I'm not her emergency contact anymore." "I know, but she doesn't have anyone else." "No family in town, and her boyfriend took off last week, according to the neighbors." I thought about Holly lying in a hospital bed, asking for the husband she'd betrayed. The irony was so perfect it almost made me laugh. "I can't help her. She just wants to see you, 5 minutes. Officer Perez, 2 years ago my wife chose her boyfriend over me when I was in that same emergency room. She made her priorities clear. People change, Jack. No, they don't. They just get better at hiding who they really are." I hung up and drove home to my kids, who were doing homework at the kitchen table, the same table where their mother had planned her affair while pretending to love us. Tyler looked up when I walked in. "How was work?" "Fine, just routine inspections. Can we have pizza tonight?" "Sure, buddy." I called Gino's and ordered our usual, large pepperoni, extra cheese. While we waited for delivery, I helped Sarah with her algebra and listened to Tyler practice his speech for student council. Normal evening, normal family, normal life. My phone buzzed with a text from the unknown number. "She keeps asking for you. Says she has something important to tell you." I deleted the message without responding. At 8 o'clock, we ate pizza and watched a movie. At 9:30, I tucked Tyler into bed and said goodnight to Sarah. At 10 o'clock, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and thought about the woman who used to live in this house. Holly had made her choice on a rainy Tuesday morning when she decided lunch with her boyfriend was more important than her injured husband. Every day since then had been a consequence of that choice. My phone rang again. I looked at the screen. Officer Perez. I turned it off and finished my coffee. Outside, it started to rain.